This is the brand new Galaxy Z Flip 4, and today I'll be showing you guys the fastest way to transfer all of your data to the Flip 4, regardless of whether you're transferring from a Samsung device, a non-Samsung Android device, or even an iPhone. I'll even show you how to transfer your data with a USB stick if you won't have your old device with you by the time the new one arrives. First, let's start with a quick unboxing. Opening the box, the first thing we see is another box. Let's go ahead and pull that out of the way. And now we see the Flip 4. If we open up this other box here, you get a USB-C to USB-C cable, a SIM ejector tool, and a quick start guide. Now this is the unlocked version, so that's all I'm gonna have in this box. But if you got a carrier version, you may have some carrier documentation as well. For now, I'm just gonna set this to the side. At the bottom of the Flip 4, there's a little pull tab, and beneath that, there's nothing else. So I'm gonna go ahead and set this to the side, and we'll take a closer look at the Flip 4. In the bottom right corner of the front of the device, there's a little arrow, and if you pull there, you'll be able to get the protective cover off. The first thing I want to point out before we set the Flip 4 is that compared to the Flip 3, the valley where the hinge is noticeably reduced on the Flip 4. Like, it's a big difference between the Flip 4 and the Flip 3. Now that may be because the Flip 4 hasn't been closed and opened a bunch of times like the Flip 3 has, but this really is a dramatic difference. So I'll keep testing this out over time, and I'll let you guys know if this gets any worse. And here's a look at the hinge valleys in the light. Hopefully you guys can see the difference there. I've got the Flip 4 on my right and the Flip 3 on my left. In terms of how the hinge feels when you close it, the hinge on the Flip 4 is definitely more stiff in a good way. The Flip 3's hinge is pretty loose and it closes and opens very easily. However, when it's closed, it doesn't sag open, and just the same when it's open, it doesn't flip closed very easily either. So it's not really an issue, it just takes less force to close and open than the Flip 4 does. One issue I noticed with the Flip 4 is that in the fully closed position, if I tilt it like this, it actually opens up a little bit. And if I shake it, you can probably hear it opening and closing. So you hear that little popping sound? That's these two pieces coming apart and touching. So it seems that Samsung didn't really put any magnets in this part here, or if they did, they're not very strong magnets because they're not really holding it closed. I don't know if that's going to be an issue long term, but I figured it was worth pointing out. And if you got a Flip 4, let me know if you have the same issue, because maybe I just got a dud that doesn't quite close as well as it should. Other than those main differences, it's pretty hard to tell the difference between these two devices. The screens look pretty much the same. Even the cameras look very similar. If I hold them up close, you'll see that the camera bezels are a bit bigger on the Flip 4 than they are on the Flip 3. They just raise up a little higher off the foam. And in terms of the hinge gap, that's about the same as well. I've got the Flip 4 on the right and the Flip 3 on the left. Another thing I noticed is the Flip 3 has a matte finish all along the edges, whereas the Flip 4 has kind of a glossy finish along the edges. That's not a big difference, but I noticed it and figured I'd point it out. Before we start the setup process on the Flip 4, let's talk about what to do if you need to trade in your old device before you can transfer any data. And don't skip this part of the video because I'll be giving you some important details that you'll need to know when you set up your new phone, regardless of whether you use this data transfer method or the next method I'll show you in a bit. This first transfer method is to securely transfer all of your data to a USB stick using Samsung's official Smart Switch application. And I'll be showing you on both an S22 Ultra and a Pixel 5 because the data you can transfer is slightly different depending on whether you're transferring from a Samsung device or a non-Samsung Android device. And if you own an iPhone, you can't use this USB stick method, but you can still transfer a little bit of data using your iCloud, which I'll show you in a bit. That said, if you want to transfer all your messages, apps, and more, you'll really want to have your iPhone with you when you get your new device so you can connect them directly to each other. But again, more on that in a bit. First, you'll need either a USB-C thumb drive or a USB-C to USB-A adapter and a standard USB stick. You can even use something like a small external SSD like this Samsung T5 drive, but you honestly won't see much of a speed difference, so just use whichever thumb drive has enough storage for all of your data. And if you need to buy a thumb drive, I'll have some links in the description to some good options of various storage sizes. And if you don't have a USB-C to USB-A adapter, you should be able to call Samsung and request one since you just purchased one of their latest flagship devices. And the last I knew, they were sending them out for free. But that may have changed by the time you see this video. If you'd rather just buy one of these adapters, I'll leave a link in the description for that too. Next, you'll need to download the Samsung Smart Switch application from the Google Play Store. So just search for the application and install it. Once it's downloaded, tap Open to open the application. And in the upper right corner, you'll see an icon that looks like a micro SD card. Go ahead and tap that. And you'll see that it says that you have no external storage device detected. So now you just need to plug your thumb drive into your device. You'll notice that on my S22 Ultra, it was recognized as USB storage, but on my Pixel 5, it wasn't recognized at all. If this happens to you, pull down your notification shade, and you should see a notification saying there's an issue with your USB drive. You can go ahead and tap to fix that, and it'll ask you to format the USB drive. Now, before you format it, it's important that you understand that all of the data that's currently on that thumb drive will be erased. So make sure you back up all of that data before you format it. Once the drive is formatted, you should see the USB storage option. Go ahead and tap that. And Smart Switch will search through all of the data on your device to find everything you can transfer. Once it's done searching through your phone, you'll get the option to transfer everything, just accounts, calls, contacts, and messages, or you get a custom option where you can select exactly what you'd like to transfer. For now, we're going to select custom so I can show you guys exactly what you can and can't transfer. So now I'm going to tap next, and I'll be able to be very specific in what I want to transfer. The first thing I want to point out with this USB method is that you can't transfer quite as much data as you'd be able to if you had both the old and new device right next to each other and could connect them directly. However, you can still transfer the vast majority of data with this USB method, and I'll show you guys the extra things you can transfer by connecting both the old and new devices directly to each other in a minute. So at the top, you get the option to transfer all of your calls and contacts, and this does include call history. You get the option to transfer all of your messages, and if you tap this little icon on the right, you can select whether you want to transfer all of your messages or just messages from a certain time period. You can also transfer all of your applications, and if you tap the arrow next to that, you can select which specific apps you do and don't want to transfer by checking or unchecking these little boxes. And at the top, you get the option to deselect or select all of your applications. Galaxy Wearable is an option that will only appear if you have a Samsung accessory installed to your old device. So that could be something like a Galaxy Watch or Samsung's wireless earbuds. And here's where you get the first difference between transferring from a non-Samsung Android device and a Samsung device. You'll notice that the Samsung device also gives you the option to transfer app settings instead of just the plugins. Now, the plugins are specific to each Samsung device. So if you have their wireless earbuds, there's a specific plugin for this specific type of wireless earbud, and that'll automatically be installed on the new device if you check the plugins box. App settings is an extra thing you can transfer if your old device is going to be a Samsung device. And this will transfer all of the specific settings for all of your accessories, so you don't have to go back into the settings and set them up the way you want. Transferring settings is where we see another big difference between transferring from a non-Samsung device to a Samsung device. Here you can see that the phone's settings are transferred, but when transferring from a Samsung device, you also get the option to transfer your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth settings. Now the Wi-Fi settings is important because that means you don't have to re-enter any of your Wi-Fi passwords on the new device. Whereas if you're transferring from this Pixel device using this USB method, you would have to re-enter those Wi-Fi passwords. You'll see that transferring from a Samsung device also gives you the option to transfer app settings for things like the game launcher, camera, and your My Files applications. And it kind of makes sense that that's Samsung exclusive because these settings are Samsung specific settings. And customization service is another Samsung specific option, and it's a feature that lets Samsung customize your experience when using things like Bixby. So again, since that's a Samsung exclusive thing, that's why you don't see it on a non-Samsung device. Further down, you'll notice that Samsung offers the option to transfer your home screen data, whereas the Pixel does not. And this includes things like your widget and app layout, as well as your lock screen and home screen wallpapers and any Samsung Dex settings. Further down, you get the option to transfer images, videos, audio, and documents and files. And if you tap these little arrows, you can actually select which specific images, videos, or files you want to transfer. And it'll even keep those files in their respective albums. And if your old device has a micro SD card installed, that option will appear at the bottom under the title SD card, and you also get the option to transfer any images, videos, music, or documents and files that are saved specifically to your micro SD card. At the very bottom, it says you can find out what data can't be backed up, and if you tap this, you'll see that some app data can't be backed up due to that particular application's policies. So depending on the application, it may or may not transfer that app data. On the Samsung side, it also tells you that it won't transfer any read-only contacts, and it also won't transfer things from your calendar or Samsung Notes because those are linked to your Samsung account, so when you log back into your Samsung account on your new device, those will automatically be transferred anyway. And down on home screen, you'll see that the default wallpaper won't be transferred. And in case you're wondering, WhatsApp data can be transferred, but unfortunately I don't have WhatsApp, so I can't demonstrate that for you guys. And I'm pretty sure you need to have both your old device and new device with you at the same time in order to transfer that WhatsApp data. So this particular USB method probably won't work for that. But hopefully Samsung adds that option in a future update. Once you've selected everything you want to transfer, it'll show you how many gigabytes you're transferring and about how long it expects to take to transfer all of that data to the USB stick. And in my personal experience, it's usually considerably faster than the estimated time. However, if you notice that the transfer is estimated to take sometime over 2 hours, it would be best to make sure that your device has a full charge, or maybe put it on a wireless charger while the data is transferring. If you select more data than what your USB stick has capacity for, you'll get a warning at the top that says there's not enough space and that you have to deselect a certain amount of data to make it fit. Fortunately, there are 2 ways around this. The first is to obviously use a USB stick with more storage space, and the second option is to use 2 USB sticks and transfer some of the data to one stick and the rest of the data to the other stick. Once you get your new device, you'll be able to restore data from both of the sticks, and I'll show you guys how to do that in a little bit. Once you've selected everything you want to transfer, scroll to the bottom and tap Backup. Now this is an incredibly important step if you're going to be transferring from a non-Samsung Android device. Right now, it's going to ask you to set a password for the USB storage, and this is a unique password that's not linked to any accounts. So what that means is if you forget this password, then plug your USB stick into your new device, you will not be able to recover any of that data unless you still have your old device with you. That's why it's very important that you write this password down somewhere and tap this little eye icon so you can see what the password is to make sure you write it down correctly. Now the good news is if for some reason you still had your old device with you, you can just go through this backup process again and create a new password that you can remember. If your previous device was a Samsung device, it's going to encrypt the data using your Samsung account. So all you need to do is log into your Samsung account on the new device and you'll be able to decrypt the data. Once you're done setting your password, if you have a non-Samsung phone, tap OK, and you'll be asked to enter it one more time, then tap OK again, and it'll start backing up all your data. On the Samsung side of things, just tap OK, and it'll start backing up the data here. Once it's done backing everything up, you'll see your backup results, then just tap Next, and it'll show you that you're all set. On the Samsung side of things, you get this Samsung Cloud option, and if you tap this, you get the option to sync all of these things to your Samsung Cloud to transfer more data automatically when you get your new Samsung device. Once you're done selecting what you want to transfer here, tap Back, then tap Done on both devices. The last step, once the data is transferred to the USB stick, is to pull down your notification shade and eject the USB drive to remove it safely. And just like that, all your data is ready to transfer to your new device using a USB stick. Now let's take a look at the setup process on the Flip 4 and see what extra data you can transfer if you're able to connect your old phone directly to your new phone. The first thing you want to do when your device turns on is check the battery percentage. If it's below about 60%, you may want to plug it in to charge it before you go to transfer all of your data. I already pre-charged mine, so it's at about 98% right now. Once you're either plugged in or already have sufficient battery life, the next thing to do is install your SIM card. And that could be a SIM card from your previous device or a brand new SIM card from your carrier. I'm going to be taking the SIM card out of my old device, so I'm going to go ahead and grab the SIM ejector tool that came with my Flip 4. Once you have your SIM tool out, you want to power off both devices. To do that on the Flip 4, just hold the side key and volume down buttons for a couple seconds. That'll give you this little menu. Tap power off, then tap power off again. Insert the SIM tool into the SIM ejection port on your old device to take out your old SIM card. Then take out the SIM tray on your Flip 4, which is on the top left side of the phone. You'll see a little notch in the corner of the tray, and that lines up with the notch in your SIM card. So go ahead and slide that into place, and it should press in and sit flush with the SIM tray. Now put the SIM tray back into your Flip 4. And one more important thing I want to point out is that the Flip 4 does not support micro SD cards. That's something Samsung did away with a long time ago, and I don't think that's going to be coming back. Once the SIM card's in your Flip 4, go ahead and power it back on by holding the side key. If you have an unlocked version of the phone like I do, when your device boots up, you'll get this notification telling you that the device needs to restart to configure features supported by your carrier. If you have a carrier version of the phone, you probably won't see this message, and that's okay. Since my phone is unlocked, I'm just going to tap Restart and Switch. Once the phone reboots, you'll be able to tap Start. Then you'll have to agree to Samsung's terms and conditions and their privacy policy, but you don't need to agree to sending them diagnostic data. This is anonymous usage data to help Samsung improve their devices. So just select whether or not you want to agree to that and tap Agree. Next, you have to log into your Wi-Fi network, so just select the network and enter the password. Next, the phone's going to check for and install any updates. Once that's done, you'll be able to start copying all of your apps and data. Now, if you have a carrier version of the phone from maybe AT&T or Verizon, you may get an option to transfer data using AT&T's or Verizon's own built-in methods. Don't use those, just keep skipping those options until you get to this screen here. And if you're not going to have your old device with you and instead use the USB stick method, go ahead and tap Don't Copy for now, and I'll show you how to transfer data from the USB stick in a minute. Since I do have my old device with me, I'm going to go ahead and tap Next. Then it's going to confirm that I have my old device with me. I'm going to tap Next again. Now it's going to update the Smart Switch application, and now I get the option to transfer from either a Galaxy or Android device or an iPhone or iPad. Let's go ahead and start with transferring from a Samsung device so you guys can see the most amount of data that can be transferred. So to transfer from a Samsung device, just tap Galaxy Android and select whether you want to connect with a cable or wirelessly. This time, let's go ahead and use the cable method. So I'm going to use the USB-C to USB-C cable that came with my Flip 4 and plug one end into the Flip 4 and the other end directly into my Flip 3. After a moment, I'll get a pop-up on my Flip 3 asking me to open up Smart Switch. Go ahead and tap OK. If you have a Galaxy Watch connected to your old Samsung device, you may get this pop-up here that asks you to update Smart Switch on your watch so that you can transfer your watch data more easily. So I'm going to go ahead and tap Update, and it's going to install Smart Switch on my Galaxy Watch. And while it's doing that, I want to quickly point out that you may notice that the screen on the Flip 4 is noticeably dimmer than the screen on the Flip 3. And that's because until the Flip 4 is completely set up, its brightness will be limited. However, once it's completely set up, the brightness between the two devices will be almost identical. And if you look at the Galaxy Watch, you'll see that Smart Switch is preparing to back the watch up. Once Smart Switch is installed on the Galaxy Watch, you get the same 3 transfer options that you guys saw earlier. I'm going to jump to Custom so you guys can see the extra things you could transfer from a Samsung device when directly connected versus using the USB stick method. So I'm going to go ahead and tap Next. And since I already discussed all of these transfer options in detail earlier, I'm only going to discuss the extra options you get when directly connected to your old device. The first thing you'll notice is right at the top, and you'll see that you can now transfer your Samsung account and Google accounts. So if you were logged into multiple Google accounts on your previous device, all of those accounts will be transferred directly over without you having to manually log in to each account. The most significant extra thing you can transfer when directly connected to your previous Samsung device is all of your Galaxy Watch information. So this transfers all of your Galaxy Watch's settings, reminders, apps, watch faces, home screen setup, and music as well. And this just makes switching your smartwatch to your new device a little bit easier. The only other extra option you get when being directly connected is in the settings, and you'll see that you can transfer Samsung's cloud settings. And these are similar to something like iCloud settings, but for Samsung devices. So that's it for the extra things you could transfer when directly connected to a Samsung device. Now let's see the extra things you could transfer when connected to a non-Samsung Android device. So this is a Pixel 5, and since this is still an Android device, I'm gonna go ahead and select Galaxy Android. And this time, let's go ahead and test out the wireless method. To do that, I first need to open up the Smart Switch application on the old device and tap Let's Go. And as a quick reminder, if you haven't already installed the Smart Switch application on your old device, you can just download and install it from the Google Play Store. And I'm going to select wireless on both devices. After a moment, I'll get a pop-up on my Pixel 5 asking me to connect to the Flip 4. I'll just tap Accept, and I'll get the same 3 transfer methods that you guys saw earlier. To see what extra things you could transfer from a non-Samsung Android device, let's go ahead and tap Custom and tap Next. So when transferring from a non-Samsung Android device, the only extra thing you get is the ability to transfer all of your Google accounts. So if you were logged into multiple Google accounts on your old device, all of those accounts would be transferred automatically without having to manually log in to each one. And in the Galaxy Wearable section, you'll notice that I can still only transfer plugins, even though my Galaxy Watch 4 is currently on and connected to my Pixel 5. Hopefully, Samsung will add all the watch-specific options that are available when transferring from a Samsung device at a later date, but as of today, if you're transferring from a non-Samsung Android device, you won't be able to transfer all of that data directly. Fortunately, if you open up the Galaxy Wearable application, you will be able to manually back up all of the watch data and restore it manually on your Flip 4 once your Galaxy Watch is connected to the Flip 4. It's a bit longer of a process, but at least it's possible. So those are all the extra things you can transfer from a non-Samsung Android device when you're directly connected versus using the USB stick method. Now let's see what you can transfer from an iPhone. When transferring from an iPhone, you'll need to connect both devices directly to each other using a cable. And that can either be a USB-C to Lightning cable or a Lightning to USB-A cable with a USB-A to USB-C adapter. Since I have the Lightning to USB-C cable, I'm just going to use that. But before I plug the cable in, I'm just going to tap iPhone, iPad, then tap Continue. And now I'll plug the USB-C side into my Flip 4 and the Lightning side into my iPhone. Once they're connected, I'll get a pop-up on my iPhone asking me to trust the Flip 4. So go ahead and tap Trust, then enter in your passcode. Now tap Next on the Flip 4. and it's going to search through the iPhone to find everything that it can transfer. Once it's done searching through everything, you'll be able to see everything you can transfer. The first notable difference is that you can't transfer any account data. So even if you're signed into different Google accounts on your iPhone, those won't transfer over to the new device. However, you can still transfer a ton of other data. First and foremost, you can transfer all of your calls and contacts. You can also transfer your messages, and if you tap this little arrow here, you can choose to transfer all of your messages or just messages from a certain time frame. You also get the option to transfer your applications, and if you tap this arrow here, you'll get a notification asking you to sign into your Google account. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Once I'm signed into my Google account, it's going to tell me that the phone is going to try to find Android versions of all the iOS apps I currently have installed. And if it can't find an exact match, it's going to give me recommendations for apps that may be close. And as I mentioned earlier, you can transfer WhatsApp data. You just have to make sure this apps option is selected. Then when you go to the bottom and select transfer, it'll walk you through the WhatsApp transfer process. You can also transfer data from iPhone apps, and this includes your calendar events, any notes that you have, bookmarks from the Safari browser, and any alarms that you've set. In terms of settings, the most important ones here are your Wi-Fi and Bluetooth connections. So this means that you won't have to re-enter any Wi-Fi passwords on the new device because they'll automatically be ported over from the iPhone. You can also transfer your home screen app and shortcut layouts, as well as the lock screen and home screen wallpapers. The only caveat with this is that it won't transfer any of the native wallpapers for copyright reasons. But if you downloaded a new wallpaper to use with your iPhone, then that wallpaper would transfer. And at the bottom, you can also transfer all of your images, videos, audio, and documents from the iPhone. However, this only applies to those files that are saved directly on the iPhone. If you have images and videos available on the iCloud, but they're not locally available on the iPhone, those ones won't transfer. So make sure you download everything from the iCloud before you start the transfer process. Something else you may have noticed is that there's no arrows next to the images, video, audio, and documents options, which means you can't select specific files or folders to transfer. You either transfer everything or nothing. At the bottom, you get the option to see what can't be transferred, and that tells you that FaceTime and voice call history can't be transferred, which makes sense because you can't get FaceTime on the Flip 4. Messages with iMessage effects also can't be transferred, which also makes sense. You also can't transfer data from locked notes. So if you do have locked notes that you want to transfer, you need to make sure that you first unlock them on the iPhone before starting the transfer process. And as I mentioned earlier, you can't transfer the default wallpapers from the iPhone for copyright reasons. The last difference you'll notice when copying from an iPhone versus a Samsung device or a non-Samsung Android device is that you don't get an estimated data size or estimated transfer time at the top. Once you've selected everything you want to transfer from the iPhone, just tap transfer at the bottom. If for some reason you won't have your iPhone with you when you get your Flip 4, you can still technically transfer some data from your iCloud. You can see this option down here, get data from iCloud instead. And if you tap this, all you have to do is log into your iCloud to transfer some data. Unfortunately, if you tap this Learn More option here, you'll see that all you can transfer are contacts, memos, calendars, photos, videos, and documents that are currently synced to the iCloud. So that means you can't transfer your apps or your messages. That's why I highly recommend plugging your iPhone directly into your Flip 4 to make sure you can transfer the most amount of data possible. Now that you've seen everything you can transfer from the iPhone, let's jump back to the Flip 3 and finish out the transfer process with that device. Once you've selected everything you want to transfer, you get an estimate of how much data you're going to be transferring and about how long it's going to take to transfer all of that data. Now just scroll to the bottom and tap Transfer. Now you'll get a notification on your old device asking you to copy the data over, so just tap Copy. Then unlock the phone with your fingerprint, and the first thing it's going to do is transfer all of your accounts. Once the accounts have been transferred, you'll get a little notification showing you all of the accounts that it transferred. Now just tap Next, and you can finish setting up your device while everything transfers in the background. One of the last pages you'll see is a bit of a warning because since this is a folding display, it's not quite as durable as something like the iPhone screen or one of Samsung's other flagship devices like the S22 Ultra. So because of that, Samsung just warns you not to use sharp objects on the display, not to throw the device in the sand, not to close things inside the display like keys, and basic things like that. But these last two are the most important things here. The first one here says not to remove the protective film that's on this inner screen, and also tells you not to add any other films to the screen either. So if you want to use a screen protector on the inside screen, Samsung's explicitly saying not to do that. And the last one tells you that the phone has strong magnets in it, and it tells you to keep the phone at least 6 inches away from implantable medical devices like a pacemaker. So if you do have a pacemaker, definitely don't put this in a chest pocket. Once you're done reading through those warnings, you can tap Next, and you'll be all set up on the new device. You'll have two options here. You can either tap Finish or Explore Your Galaxy. If you tap Explore Your Galaxy, you'll get some tips on how to use different features on the device. Once you're done looking through that, you can tap back and tap finish. Once all the data is transferred to the new device, you'll get a notification on your old device telling you that the transfer is complete. And if you pull down the notification shade on your new device, you'll see that it's still organizing your transferred data. And if you tap that little arrow, you'll see there's about 14 minutes left. And if you tap the text, it'll show you exactly what's still being organized. Now, the difference between transferring and organizing is that your old device is going to pack up all the data into an encrypted and compressed file and then transfer it that way to make the transfer happen faster. Once all that data is transferred, it then has to unpack all of it and put it in the appropriate locations on the new device. The benefit of doing this is that it reduces the amount of time that the two devices need to stay connected to each other. So since the transfer is already completed, I can now disconnect the old device and move that to the side and start using my new device. If Samsung didn't use this method, both devices would need to stay connected the entire time. So now I'm just going to tap done and set my old device to the side. Once the data finishes transferring, you'll get a notification with the transfer results. Then just tap next and you'll be done transferring all your data to your brand new Flip 4. If you're using the USB transfer method, you're going to want to complete the setup process on your Flip 4 without using any of the restore methods. Once you get to the home screen on your Flip 4, you're going to want to go to your applications and open up the Smart Switch application. From here, you're going to tap the same micro SD card option that you tapped earlier. Now you're going to plug in your USB stick and you get the option to restore data from the USB stick. And if you restore data from multiple devices to that same USB stick, you'll have all of the options there. For now, I'm just going to select this option. Now it's going to decrypt my data and give me the same 3 transfer options as before. I'm going to go ahead and tap custom and tap next. And I get the option to selectively transfer anything that I saved to the USB stick. Now, since you already went through all these options and selected what you want to transfer anyway, you can just tap all, scroll to the bottom, and tap restore. If you needed to use multiple USB sticks to transfer all of your data, or you just want to transfer data from multiple devices, all you'd have to do is finish the restore process from this USB stick. Then once that process is finished, it'll take you all the way back to your home screen. At this point, you can pull your notification shade down, tap the USB storage option, and unmount the existing USB stick. Now just go back into the Samsung Smart Switch application, and if you want to transfer more data from another phone, you can tap receive data, and that'll take you to the setup process that I showed you guys earlier. Or if you're going to be transferring from another USB stick, tap the micro SD card icon again, plug in the new USB stick, and select the data that you want to transfer from that USB stick. I recently picked up a ton of Samsung devices, so be sure to subscribe and turn notifications so you don't miss my deep dive coverage of all of these devices. And if you can't wait for my unknown features video on the Flip 4, you can check out the unknown features video on the S22 Ultra by tapping the link in the upper left corner, because many of those features will work on the Flip 4 as well. Or you can see my more recent videos by tapping the link in the upper right corner. That's it for this tech episode. God bless, guys, and I'll catch you in the next one.